Hello, my beautiful friends. Welcome to Proper Madness. My name is Sabby, and I give a unique perspective on mental health by providing tools, guidance, and knowledge on how we can better understand ourselves, as well as our past and present experiences, and in doing so, we can help heal our mental health. I get to speak with a variety of individuals from around the world as they share their stories from their journey through their mental wellness so that it helps others stand strong and use their voice. Welcome back, everyone, to Proper Madness. Today, I'm honored by having Nino on. He's awesome. I stumbled upon him, I think, maybe a year ago on Instagram, and then TikTok, actually, too. One or the other. I don't remember which one. But he is the most wonderful person in the way that he connects the dots with his own opinions and what's happening in culture and society today. So I'll let him introduce himself to you and all of that.
Hey, Sabby, thank you so much. It is Sabby pronounced, right?
Yes, it
Okay,
is.
Sabby, thank you so much for having me on. Yeah, my name's Nino. I'm pretty much just a guy who is on his own little journey of trying to rediscover my spirit, my connection to something that is perhaps past the material realm. And in that process, I've encountered a lot of dogma, trauma, and tragedy. And along that line, and during my psychological education, I became heavily passionate about the idea that most of our suffering is, in fact, caused by the mind and the narratives of which we construct around objective events. And I think the same happens culturally, that we attach ourselves to narratives that are disempowering as society, on the societal level and as individuals. And I've made it a big point in my life, both on my own personal podcast, Where's the Nuance, to discuss how we can bring some nuance into these seemingly black and white topics, and as a coach who works with individuals, how to do that on the individual level, how to push past the dogmatic narratives, ideologies, and self-limiting beliefs that keep us trapped in unconscious behavior patterns as victims of chance and uncertainty, when really most of our lives do give us quite a lot of opportunity for power, control, whatever that you want to name it, freedom. We just don't believe it.
Why do you think people don't believe that?
I think we grow up in a society and in a culture that puts authority as aligned with truth. We're taught from a very young age that anybody in positions of authority know more and know better than you. And most people are deferential to authority. There's a personality temperament scale or test that I took, and I was the fourth lowest in politeness, aka how likely I was deferential to authority. So I was lucky in the sense that throughout most of my life, I never intuitively or automatically believed in authority figures. But I think that most people do, because that's good. Most humans are trusting, not like me, who's paranoid. But when you live in a society that gives a very small subsection of possibilities and constrains your thinking between ideological lines, you really, your mind gets shaped by these influences through the education system, through mass media. I mean, even like a concept, we could take the idea of a country. We think of this as a very objective thing when we're growing up. A country is real. But, the older you get, if you can have an intellectual discussion with someone, you can hopefully get to the point where it's actually a country is an imagined border that is enforced through force by a government that is wants to control a certain landmass. And within that landmass, anyone born there has to be a citizen because there is no option. And if you are a citizen, you pay taxes, which is a form of legal coercion. And sure, people make arguments that it's good and for the well-being. That's all fine and happy to have that argument. The simple point is, you are entrenched within a system that you did not choose, that forces you to think about the world in a certain way, which is not objectively real. It's social. A lot of it is socially constructed. Some people would argue agreed upon. I would argue a lot of it was done through coercion and force.
No, I first of all, I agree. I think a lot of people keep themselves trapped mentally in these borders, even not just in countries, but within their own selves and what they believe. I call them sheeple. That's what I like to call them, right? People who just kind of follow the masses and believe what everyone else is believing and thinking. And to your point, to authority, of if they have that title and that status, it's almost like it's a given and an assumption that we need to abide by them. Yeah. And I was the same as you growing up. It was like a little rebellious thing. Anytime anyone told me what to think and believe, I would question it. Like, I'm not sure. Like, I don't trust you.
That's good. I think I think that in a society like the one we live in, that's a great thing. And then also in a different society, we could have, it's not so great
Yeah.
because it would probably have prevented a lot of, trusting relationships to be formed. But, in the context of where we grew up in, I think it served us.
Yes. To an extent. Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
Definitely. So what, okay, so growing up, right, when you had this ideal and these thoughts, like how, just tell me a little bit about your story and how you came to
Yeah. How it
push
got
those
to this
limits.
point.
Yeah.
I grew up, my parents would have described me as like this way too self-assured child. Like I was, by the time I was 2 or 3 years old, I would I would jump into swimming pools when I had never been taught how to swim. My parents, like, I think that's a very good little microcosm that shows that from a young age, I just believed I could do it. I believed,
Mm.
why couldn't I do it? I didn't personally place a lot of limitations on myself, even though, I definitely didn't know how to swim and definitely had a lot to learn. So I always kind of, I was always in, so far as I can remember, was always challenging the idea that I couldn't do something. And I always felt like I could do that. Why couldn't I? And my
Mm.
parents probably inflated that ego a little bit too, to calling me principe and also holding me to an extremely high ethical standard in regards to my education. If I didn't get straight A's, it wasn't, oh, good job, you got all A's and one B. They'd go, why didn't you get an A? And then when I would start giving reasons like, oh, well, this and that, they go like, that doesn't make sense because you could have. It was like they never doubted. They never placed, or very rarely did my parents place doubt of myself within me. So it always kind of shifted my internal locus of control inwards. I always felt like, it's kind of true. Anything that I didn't do, like, that's on me. Then I was struck by a series of traumatic events from like 13 to 21, where my grandma took her own life when I was 13. At 15, my aunt was murdered. And then by 21, my best friend died of an overdose. And in that process, I started to become more disillusioned, less positively passionate, and more apathetic, more resentful, more bitter. Started using drugs, marijuana, MDMA, pretty much anything that could help me act as an escapism, because while I had this mindset of, oh yeah, anything was possible, I was starting to kind of believe what society was telling me. There is only
Mm.
one way that the world works. This is the way the world works. Money is the highest good. This is the framework by which we exist. And I started to kind of buy it. And I was like, you know what? I guess that's true. I guess I should just not give a shit and just value money at the highest level. I guess, and I was on track, I think, to becoming, honestly, a sociopathic CEO, marketing manager that doesn't care about anything except money. And luckily, at 18, I had two, like, I'd say three events that fundamentally transformed my mind and then led to like the catalyst towards the change, which were, the first was, I was in a university course with this lovely French lady, a humanities course, and she was using the Socratic dialogue to challenge everything I believed. She would ask me things like, how do you know what you know? And me being the arrogant, right, resentful, kind of smart ass guy, I would put up my hand and go, well, because of this. And she'd go, well, how do you know that? And she would just engage in that dialogue to the
Mm.
point that my mind was irritably frustrated and my ego fucking hated it. And I thought, okay, fine. I guess I don't know what I know. I don't know. And she was like, amazing. Now you're at the place from which you can start truly knowing. And I was like, it really hit me. I was like, holy shit, I think she has a point. And then soon after, I did an acid trip. And it wasn't my first time doing it. I've been using psychedelics for years, but it was the first time I ever did a psychedelic and just sat alone with my thoughts. I just sat in my room essentially at 18 years old in university, right around that time, and I just put out everything that was in my head into a journal. And that kind of started to, like, I guess, act as an entryway into better thinking. And
Mm.
then the third thing was, it was the Paris attacks that year when I was 18. I don't know if you remember, there was terrorist attacks
Yeah.
in Paris and a lot of people died. And this father and son released a video where they forgave the terrorists, where they said they'd lost their mother and wife respectively, and they made a video of pure love and empathy saying, we will not bow to your ideology. Your ideology wants to divide us and it wants me to hate you. I don't hate you. What you did was obviously done out of an ignorance. There's no way that if you truly understood the weight of what you did, you would have done that, because I believe in the love and decency of you as a human. And I was just bawling seeing that humanity, that display of empathy, something that I had almost let die within me. So those three things, one was like the intellectual entryway from that professor. Acid was the actual like psychic breakdown of the rigid beliefs I had. And then that show of displaying compassion reawakened my own empathy and compassion, I guess. And it was within those few weeks that I truly dived into the self work regarding, and I was doing a psychology degree, which was just kind of lined up,
Mm.
but doing the psychological work on my trauma and trying to like figure out how it was affecting me, digging into my own drug use. However, that I wasn't really able to find sobriety for years. um Exploring what it meant to be spiritual, what is beyond the material realm. And now subsequently, 7 years later after that event, I've still experienced trauma. I lost my best friend. Just this last summer, my cousin, who was like my best friend, shot himself. And what I really preach about, the most powerful thing, because my life unfortunately holds a lot of trauma and grief, is the truth. And I can tell you from experience, which is, it's not that those things aren't awful and break your heart, because they do. They really do. I'm saying this with a smile
Mm.
because that's just my response. They're heartbreaking. But the true suffering that arises from trauma and those events isn't even the event itself. It's the narrative of pain in which I had constructed around them, that I had constructed around being a victim in an unjust world, about being this person who was always destined to lose everyone who loved. Those narratives are truly what led to my day-to-day suffering, what led me to need escapism within drugs. It's the narratives of pain that we attach ourselves to. And as such, in that realization, that's where meditation and the practices around spirituality hold so much value. They are the practices that give an individual the opportunity to let go of the attachment to your emotions, the attachment to your thoughts, truly live presently. And within that present moment, you realize, you are you're the creator of your reality, of course, within reason. I'm not saying that,
Yes, you
let's
can create. No, first of all, I am sorry about all of those things that happened, right? That's a
yeah.
lot of trauma for one person to go through. That's a
Yeah.
lot. And I relate to that. We have very similar stories, so I understand that,
I'm
like, the
sorry then.
no, I mean, like, you, to your point, those things happen and we create narratives, but it's up to us to rewrite those narratives, right? We have the
Mhm.
responsibility to take care of that instead of living in a mindset that still perpetuates an ongoing negative cycle. But
That's
it's very rare for someone like you and I to take a step back and go, oh, whoa, let me figure this out. Let me become self-aware, take a step outside of myself and realize what's going on. And I have a choice, right? And everyone has a
yeah.
choice with those things. So you made the choice to do what you did and to transmute the trauma that you had been through and use it to get to where you are today. So
Yeah.
that speaks volumes. Not a lot of people do that, and not a lot of people have the strength to do that. To a point, I think they do have the strength, they just choose not to see it. That's
I was, you know what? I was lucky more than anything. I was lucky that I always had two parents that when I at 19 years old confessed all the crap that I was up to, they supported me. They didn't,
mm,
I know people who, when they tell their parents how deep they're in, their parents like disown them. I had parents to support me. I had brothers who loved me. And God saved my life. Like I know that word is loaded, but like there was a time when during like the height of my drug use, I think I was I like lost my mind very briefly. I was going through a psychotic episode, and I have no other word for it, but the divine source, God, the ultimate creator, guided my crazy ass towards a book that was a therapeutic manual, that was literally a manual designed for therapists to help clients dealing with intrapsychic conflict, which
oh
is what
wow.
I was dealing with. It was, and the story's kind of crazy, but long story short, I did not know this book was there. Some kind of voice in my head guided me towards it. And I found this book, read it, then using the principles, it helped pull me out of that psychosis. And there's been moments throughout my life that have felt divinely guided. And as such, I do want to say I owe so like I owe it to God. And like I get like I'm gonna get emotional saying this, but I'm like
That's
I
totally
really owe
fine.
it to God, and I don't take responsibility for it, because it's that same like it's weird that yes, I encourage people to take responsibility of their pain and their healing and their transmutation and accountability and all that. But at the highest truth, I truly know that there is no I, that the concept of me is an illusion. And that's the illusion that keeps drawing me into suffering. And the more that I surrender to a higher power, to God, the more peace, guidance, and success I find.
Yeah,
So, yeah,
no, I truly could not agree more. I think I think when we are divinely guided though, and that hand is set out for us to follow, we have to take it.
we have to take it. Yeah, absolutely.
Mhm.
You're right.
Yeah, like we have still, there's still that choice.
Yeah.
There's still
Free
that choice.
will.
Yeah,
That's what
free
God gave
will.
us. You got it. You got free
Yep.
will.
You can hear the divine guidance from God and he can lead you to where you're supposed to be, but it's up to you whether or not you feel the fear and like the anticipation of, oh God, where is this going to go? Or you just kind of let go and let God, as cliche as that is,
I
and just
like that, man.
follow it,
Cliche
you
is
know?
real.
Yeah, that is true. Because there's so much outside of our control in life, right? So much. We control a good portion of what we do, and we cannot control the majority of what happens outside of us. I mean, to a degree, you can, right? We talk about
Yeah.
manifestation, all that, but like at the same time, you can't
The
control what
scope
other
of your
people do.
awareness isn't God. Like you don't have God's
Yeah.
wisdom, and as such, you have to humble yourself. That this is something I talk about with my clients on a more practical psychological level, which is there's an infinite number of factors that determine the context of your reality.
Mm.
If you move about your life as if you need everything to be expected and controlled, you're done for. You're done for. And the secondary part is a lot of the beauty in life comes from the mystery when you truly embrace it. Because if I told you every detail of your life from this moment onwards to the point of your death, you would not want to live that life anymore
Yep.
because suddenly, like, you'd be like, "That's fucking boring." Humans actually do crave a little bit of unknowing and
Mm.
discomfort. It's just about how can we train ourselves to surrender to that instead of
Yes.
creating the mental suffering through to that kind of like incessant self masturbatory self reflection of like, oh my god, am I going the right way? Do what's my purpose? That is the suffering. The suffering is not in
Mm.
like the lack of purpose. It's that you keep fucking
Yep.
incessantly asking, "What's my purpose?" That's gonna cause you suffering.
No, it's true. I'm laughing so hard because I was that was me like circa maybe 6 months ago.
Hey,
Right.
sorry to call her out like that.
It's fine. She's good, she's
Yeah,
good. She figured it out.
yeah.
No, but there was a time I think where I just wanted to control literally everything and anything as a trauma response because
Yes,
of
it is.
being so scared of the unknown, right? Which you obviously understand. So it's almost like when you go through a series of big traumas like you have and I have, at some point you're like, shit, I kind of want to know. I kind of want some predictability and stability
Yeah.
because this is too much chaos. But to your point, we can't predict it. We really can't. There's no point. If you like you said, if you were to tell me everything that happened, I'd be like, wow, why would I continue reading this book? I'm just gonna go put it down.
Yeah, I'd have
Yeah.
ruined the story. You know what's funny to touch on that trauma point? Perhaps anyone who's listening who's ever dealt with addiction can relate, or who knows someone in their life who's dealt with it. Part of why I found solace in drugs is that, ironically, while drugs create chaos, it also creates a predictable chaos that's actually it creates a sense of disorder because I'm used to disorder because my life has had trauma, but it's actually very predictable chaos because you know what's going to happen. You get a
Yes.
predictable high, you know that you're going to feel like shit after, and you know you're going to want to do that thing, and then it gets you stuck in a cycle. Especially me with my drinking, where I was like, Thursday having some good drinks. Friday, I'm really drinking. Saturday, I just continued the drinking from Friday, so I didn't even feel bad. Sunday, I feel awful. Monday, I'm not doing good. Tuesday, I'm starting to, maybe I have a little bit of wine, starting to get back into it. Wednesday, I'm feeling good and productive. Thursday, let's have some drinks. And the cycle continues. And it's
Yeah.
predictable. And even if it's not consciously acknowledged, that's really what I think, like, people who are alcoholics and addicts,
Hmm.
it's not like they're not doing it, they're doing it because it does feel good. Like,
Yeah.
people like to treat it like addiction is the problem. I go, no, no, addiction is the
Mm-mm.
solution to their problem. That is the solution to my pain, was a predictable high, predictable low, something I thought I could manage. But truly, that's the joke, right? You
Yeah.
cannot manage that.
No, so it's all control. It's all control. Yeah, I too, we have very similar stories. It's very eerie. I too fell into drugs and alcohol as well as a coping mechanism. And I
Mm.
labeled myself as an addict for a long time. And then I went to meetings and I was like, no, I don't think I fit in here. Why? Because I was like, this is a coping mechanism for not dealing with my shit. And
Yeah.
that's the cycle. And so I fell into the same thing of, oh, this feels really good. This feels really great. I don't have to feel anything. I don't have to deal with
Yeah.
anything. I'm like,
You
this is
just feel
awesome.
good and numb.
Yeah. It's like, this is cool. I just, go to raves almost all the time, like
Yeah.
fry my brain and then really feel like shit for 2 weeks and then go,
Uh,
weed sounds great. And then it was a bad cycle though. In college, that's all I did. I was around 21, 22 is when I just hit bottom too. And then 23, I was like, all right, I don't
yeah.
like this.
23 was like starting to really, maybe I need to get out of it. How old are you, if you don't mind me asking?
I am 32.
Oh, really? Wow, so
Yeah.
you've been good for a while.
I've been, yeah, I got my shit together when I was,
Yeah.
well, no, I got my shit together when I was 23. I really like turned my life around. I dove into fitness and working out and eating
That
clean.
does it, man. It's a great foundation for
Oh
anybody who
God,
wants to change their life.
I tell everyone that on my platform all the time. I'm like, how do you expect emotionally and mentally to feel good and to feel functional if what you put into your body and what you're consuming is shit?
It's
You know,
poison.
it is.
Yeah,
And
see,
you're
I
not
try not to
moving.
talk about it too much on my platform because I do know
Mhm.
that a lot of people still have quite a harmful relationship with their diet. But I'm keto personally, and I intermittent
Yeah.
fast. I don't touch sugars. I don't touch like I'm a little bit extreme, but that's just me.
No, yeah.
But most people dump sugar into their body every single day and like quite a lot and eat bad, and then they talk to me and tell me, yeah, I'm on antidepressants because like I tried the whole meditation thing, it doesn't work. And I'm like, really?
Oh
How
my
long did you try it
God.
for? Like a week. Okay, great. And how long have you been on a healthy diet? Oh, I never have. Okay, so don't fucking talk to me
Yep.
about these things don't work until you have put in years of discipline and practice, because yes, the truth is it does take time, and the secondary truth is
Mhm.
it took probably years for your system to become dampened by all the
Yep.
habits that you have. It's probably going to take a couple more years for that system to become elevated from new habits. And people don't like hard solutions. Everybody wants a quick fix. We live in the society of,
Dude,
I want a quick fix, a pill,
you're
anything that can treat
preaching.
my symptoms of my problem. I don't want to get to the root of my problem because that requires work and discipline. And that's why, me as a coach, I'm not the person you work with if that's what you want. If you want somebody to like, stroke your ego, I will be the worst person to work with you because I don't stroke anyone's egos. In fact, my goal and my tagline is, I'm a mirror that guides you to your inner wisdom. But what
Mm,
does a mirror do? It shows you all your shit.
yep. No,
So,
because people are mirrors, first of all, to us, to
yes.
what we have to heal. Second, yes, discipline is what leads you to bettering yourself. If you don't have discipline and you don't have a why behind it, there's literally no point. A lot of like exactly like you said. You know how many times I've heard people say, "Oh, I really just want to get rid of my anxiety for a couple of just for a little bit. I think if I take X, Y, and Z, it'll be gone." I'm like, no, you have to sit through it. You kind of have to sit through it. That's why people hate meditation, because you're alone with your own thoughts. You have to sit there with them. And like most of the time, we live in a world of escapism. Like you said, we want to escape. We're escape artists. No
Yeah.
one likes to sit alone with themselves. So when you did that acid trip and you sat down alone with yourself,
Mm,
no wonder, right? When you face your shit and you sit and you get quiet with it, it does wonders for you. I definitely had a couple clients like that too that were like, well, I'm really feeling anxious and I'm really going through a hard time. Like, okay, cool. So you're gonna do all this. I'm like, this is what you gotta do. Are you gonna commit to it or are you gonna like quit halfway through? And it's holding someone accountable, but ultimately they have to hold themselves accountable, right? That's all
yeah,
it is.
you can't help. That's something I learned in psychology. It's
Mhm.
something you'll learn in AA, anywhere. You can't help
Yeah,
somebody who doesn't want to help themselves. And
no.
in part, that's why I do sometimes, I've shared this online, this sentiment that I think rock bottoms are good for people,
Yep.
because it's very hard for a person who has some degree of comfort and who's complacent to like radically change their life because they're comfortable, like, but when you have rock bottom, like true rock bottom is like, I don't like myself. I am not comfortable with what I am and
Mhm.
who I've done and what I've created. That is a much more that's a much more likely place from which change might occur. And I know in my own life, when I was 18, I hated myself. Like, I really, that moment where I was like crying in my dorm room after watching that video, I just looked at myself and I thought, what the fuck is wrong with you, man? Like, you have parents, you still have family that are alive, in spite of having lost people, you
Mm,
still have both your parents, you still have two brothers, you have the opportunity to be in university, and you're here bitching and whining about the state of the world instead of taking advantage of all the things you have in your life. And like, thankfully I had enough. Thankfully, I was willing to let go of the concept of myself at that moment so that I could really start accepting the idea that I could create a new me. And now I'm at the point where truly I embody the idea that who I am, or the idea that I even am something, is kind of an illusion. It's like, yeah, what is that held together by? A series of
mm,
memories that you have to consistently tell yourself make up who you are, even though memory is the most like malleable thing ever. And
mm.
really, like, anything that you draw from the past is easily biased by the present. AKA, the point of that spiritual notion is that you are this moment, you are whatever is being expressed in this moment, whatever you're being right here right now, that is the totality of your existence. And the more that you can lean into that, the easier it is to get your ass to the gym, or whatever the fuck it is that you is aligned with your values and the core of what you want to be, because you can just shut up a little bit. And again, it takes years. I was a self-identified overthinker, and I still
Mm.
talk a lot, but like, the actual stream of consciousness in my mind is almost silent most of the day. When I first started meditating at 18, so 7 years, 8 years ago now, I literally could not sit down and have silence. Like, I would spend, and I would only be able to do it for like 5 minutes at a time. It'd be 5 minutes of me sitting down and just thinking. And it wasn't until a year of doing that every single day, because I was a practice that I wanted to do. But it wasn't until a year into that practice that I ever had a true silent 5 minutes. And I
Wow.
remember it because I was just, I was all like, okay, whatever. It's just this thing I do. It doesn't even work, whatever. And I went into it with no expectation. And it was that lack of expectation that allowed my mind to just settle. I had the 5 minutes, and it wasn't until like my alarm rung that I was like, "Oh my god, I did it! Like, this is what the fuck they've been talking about." And I had
Oh,
this
God.
little mystical experience, and I'm always somewhat shy to share it, but I think I should. There
Mm.
are spiritual people who listen, which is I literally had the first mystical experience of my life that wasn't drug induced, and I had this. I had chills run through my entire body. My body like kind of convulsed, and I had this, not thought, but this awareness, this knowledge that I had been here before. And it never, and I said it out loud, and I said, I've been here before. And I started crying profusely. It was super weird. I didn't know what was going on, but some part of me recognized that I had been alive before, that this wasn't the first time I had lived a life. And in fact, I think I'd done this many times, and it was very weird. I never told anyone while, in those early years, because I was like, this is fucking crazy. It wasn't until like recently, now that I'm much more entrenched in the yogic ideas around reincarnation and karmic cycles, that I'm like, oh yeah, 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 definitely. I have done this journey one too many times, and that initial mystical meditation experience just brought about a deep realization at the seat of awareness, the thing that is not ego, not the I, not the Nino, not the idea of who I am, but the observer of all that, knew that it had done this before. And in that kind of comfort, I really, and this is where I'm crazy, I don't really believe death happens the way that we imagine it. Like, death
Mm.
is like, it's like, I don't die, Nino dies. But the trick of that, the crux of that is, yes, the idea that I hold of myself will die. That
Mm.
dies with your
Yeah,
body.
because it's your vessel, right? Your vessel's
Mhm.
here to serve its purpose.
Yes.
And then afterwards you go on to the next. Yeah, I too I believe very heavily in past lives, in that
Perfect.
the whole thing. I did past life regression a few times with
Whoa. What was
I had
that
a
like?
oh my gosh, it was insane. And it also highlighted to me a lot of the cycles that I'm stuck in currently in this lifetime, and how to break through them. So then
Oh yeah.
yeah, it was nuts. And then it dawned on me, not to like, put myself on a pedestal, but it dawned on me that because I'm an abnormally self-aware person, and highly, highly in tune, like highly empathic. And so it dawned on me that in this lifetime, I've broken the cycles that I was stuck in previously for a few lifetimes. So I did hypnotherapy versions of past life regression, which was really, really cool.
I heard those
And
are
I
really
could,
powerful.
it was, I saw So for me, I saw a lot of past life situations which were ongoing of just abusive, toxic relationships
Mm.
where, and I could see it was crazy. I'm getting chills now talking about it. I could see, I could see these women die by the hands of these men. And then I
Oh,
looked into my current life and I was like, holy crap, if I were to look back at a couple of my most abusive relationships, they are direct mirrors to them. The only difference is I left. I escaped
yes.
somehow. Or I was divinely guided by God many times of like, it's this, you need to get the fuck out of there. Like it's time.
That's
And I listened. A couple times I fought it and bit me in the ass, but then I listened, you know. So it's pretty powerful how we get stuck in the same cycles each lifetime if we do not break it and we do not move through it and we don't learn the lesson. Then in the next one, there you
absolutely.
are. You got to
What I like
break
about
the
this
cycle.
idea of reincarnations is that there's two ways I can look at it. I can look at it spiritually and go, "Oh yeah, it's like past lives, and these past lives could have been like anywhere in time. It could have been from the because time
Yeah.
in that astral realm doesn't work the same way, and it's non-linear, and it's more esoterically inclined, and like I
Mhm.
have karmic debt to that I have to you know work out in this lifetime from those past lives. Now that's one way of looking at it, and it's
Yep.
kind of the nice one. The psychological way of looking at it is very grounded in your genes. It's like, well, your genetic makeup, even your psychic makeup, is, well, of all your ancestors, of all those lives.
Mhm.
And we actually know that the consciousness, the foundation of your consciousness is literally created by the accumulation of the experiences that your ancestors had. There's a reason that you and I intuitively are scared of spiders and snakes. Why is that? Enough people in your ancestral line had that fear and it helped them survive. And as such, that psychological fear was passed down. And
Yes.
so that's how your psyche's formed. So from the psychological lens, if we don't want to get too spiritual, that's actually not a bad idea, that you are carrying the, let's say, psychological makeup of the
Yep.
past ancestors, and you are now being called by evolution, by your life, to see if you can overcome these things, and how much can you grow and actualize within your consciousness. I like that. I like sharing that better because I think it's easier for people to ground
Yeah,
themselves to
because a
it.
lot of people aren't.
No, yeah, a lot of people aren't fucking crazy.
A lot of people aren't crazy like we are. No, yeah,
Yeah.
it's no, but it's true, right? We hear that
Yeah.
term all the time, breaking generational curses, right?
Yes. The
Same
trauma,
concept.
same
Yep.
concepts.
Yeah. But I want to talk about what we talked about at the start, right? Which is that victim mindset that
Yeah.
people love to place themselves in. Yeah. Would you want to hear my take and then you
Yeah,
can
please, sure.
let me get on my soapbox. Um, so okay, so for me personally, I find that the way that we're talking about mental health now, which we talked about, is great, right? Mental health is being talked about, depression's being talked about, anxiety is being talked about, everything to an extent. However, it gives room to people to use it as an excuse to keep themselves stuck and to almost what I like to call the victim mindset, which is I'm comfortable in my suffering and I do not want to grow. Therefore, it gives me an excuse to keep existing the same way that I am existing and to not improve. And it also, unfortunately, gives room for shitty people to do shitty things and then use mental health as an excuse.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's where my brain stands on it. And it's frustrating, right? Because when you have been through a lot of things in your life and you're one of those people that overcomes it and moves forward, you see all these other people that are still just stuck in the darkness because they kind of want to be stuck in the darkness. It's like they're just
Yeah.
like our eyes adapt to the darkness. It's the same. Their mind just adapts to like, okay, we're here. I don't want to see the light, even though it might be shining bright at them. They don't want to. And I think it's an interesting topic, and there's so many ways we can go with it. But yeah, that's just one of my biggest frustrations, I think, within the whole mental health industry.
You said something which was, it's very, I don't know if you even were conscious of it, but it's very reminiscent of Plato's allegory of the cave, where, if you probably are familiar with it, but
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, where, so there's the concept for anyone listening who's not aware, I'll just really quickly, there's prisoners inside of a cave, and they don't even know they're prisoners, and they're watching a wall, and on this wall, there's shadows being projected from behind them onto the wall. And this is their whole concept of reality. That's all they know. And one day, one of the prisoners' chains just like gets loose. And suddenly he's able to stand up and turn his head around. And he realizes, wait, what the hell? The thing I've been looking at my entire life is just a projection that's being, these are shadows being cast onto a wall. And there's two versions of the story where there's actual people who are casting the shadows, and there's others where it's just being projected. It doesn't really matter. The idea is the concept of the reality was limited and they just hadn't seen a greater picture. He leaves the cave and he's blinded for a while. It takes him a minute to adjust to the light. But when he finally does, he realizes, oh my goodness, I've been blind. I've been in chains. Look at this. Look at the world. Look around me. This is the real world. And, compassionately, he feels called to go back down into the cave and wake his fellow prisoners up to show them the truth. But because it's so dark when he goes back down there, he's not actually that able to see in the dark, and he kind of like clumsily falls a little bit. And the prisoners look at him and go, dude, you're an idiot. We're not going to listen to anything you have to say. Look at you. You can't even manage in the dark. And he's like, no. It's just because I was in the light and I can't manage that well. But like, you guys this is not real. And they make fun of him. They throw rocks at him, tell him to get the hell out of there. So he just goes back up to the surface and he goes out of the cave, but he wasn't able to like help the other prisoners. And there's something kind of allegorical about that story. And I mean, it is kind of an allegory, and towards what happens in society, around the fact that most of us grow up in a society that conditions us to perceive the world in a very limited fragment. I think I mentioned this earlier in the podcast, and
Yeah.
that conditioning becomes the basis of our reality, but we don't even realize that it's conditioning because we passively accepted the conditioning as just education, as truth, as knowledge, when really it wasn't. A lot of it is propaganda. A lot of it is social programming and dogmatic ideologies that are perpetrated or implemented by forces. And when it comes to mental health, I think, unfortunately, as somebody who studied psychology and has a degree in it with a minor in counseling, and I truly see the impact and the positive value of a practice like therapy, but I also understand that when therapeutic language becomes weaponized by individuals to almost limit themselves, this is a problem. It's a problem when we as a society say something like, I am depressed. Now that's not possible. Like you can be experiencing depression, but you are not depression. In fact, we have actually no biological basis for depression. The old theory regarding low serotonin has been disproven. It is not real. And in fact, most disorders or mental illnesses are not actual objective realities. What they are there's a cluster of symptoms. If you hit at least a certain minimum amount of them, then it lasts for a certain amount of time and actually negatively impacts your life. Then you can go in and get a diagnosis. The diagnosis is positive insofar that it helps a clinician know what's the best probable way of giving you help. But what it's not helpful in is in creating the idea that you actually objectively have an illness, a mental illness that is just an excuse now for you to not approach life through the idea that you are whole. Because the truth is, what it really is you're probably stuck. This is the best way of understanding it. Mental illness is like you're stuck in an unconscious behavior or emotional pattern. And that emotional or behavioral pattern has become so ingrained in your habits in life that it feels like your existence. And in that understanding, that gives the individual an opportunity to go, okay, so if I change my habits, my structure, my health, and all the things that influence my emotions and behaviors, I have a chance at undoing or getting rid of this. But a lot of people don't like that narrative. A lot of people, this is something Eckhart Tolle talks about, the spiritual teacher, they have what is called a pain body. We all have it. And this pain body, this part of us that likes pain, creates a sense of identity around the pain and suffering that we experience. So the longer that we're entrenched within an idea of suffering or pain or depression or anxiety, we end up kind of romanticizing it. We become attached to the story of suffering because becomes an integral part of our identity. And I think that the modern mental health system exacerbates that problem by giving literal diagnoses as if they were objective, identifiable things in our psyche, as it, oh, I am depression, I have this. And now people go online and it's a victim competition, This is all the ways in which I'm oppressed. I'm a gay, transsexual, depressed, bipolar, whatever. And then they list a list of categorical things that are supposedly what's keeping them under. But really, it ends up actually serving as a boost for their ego because it increases their level of self-identity. And your ego well, wants an identity. It's how it finds and derives power. So while we brought the mental health conversation as a way of lessening suffering, in its ideal, what it's doing in the actual process of engaging with this identity of having an illness, of being a victim, is that it actually exacerbates our attachment to the stories of suffering, which makes it way harder to actually deal with the suffering. So
Mm.
that's my analysis of this problem. And which is why I truly tell people, you are not like, perhaps the best step is simply a practice like meditation, where you can learn to see very truthfully that you are not your thoughts, that you are not your emotions. And hopefully in that detachment, we can talk about the next steps in recognizing your depression it doesn't define you. It is a byproduct of ABC, whatever the hell,
Mhm.
and you can kind of get through that list.
Yeah, no, I think you explained it so well. Very, very well. Because so many people attach their identity to what they're thinking and feeling. They're
Mm-hmm.
very attached to it. Almost, I mean, all of us to an
We
extent.
all have, yeah, we all do. Yeah.
Yeah, we're all just, I mean, if we're thinking and feeling something, oh, I'm anxious.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, the way you say it and the way you phrase it is still aligning with making yourself attached to that feeling and thought, as
Mm-hmm.
opposed to what you said, detaching from it and understanding, no, that's what I'm currently experiencing, but that is not who I am. That's not what I am. That's not a part of me currently in this moment in time. So yeah, it's the art of detachment though with your emotions is tough for a lot of people to
It's tough
figure
for
out,
everybody.
right?
It's
Yeah.
just, yeah.
It's hard. I mean, because I mean, detachment's everything. When something makes us feel something, when something raises our emotions or gives us some sort of response like that, it's tough not to get attached to an emotion because emotions feel either entirely good or entirely bad or somewhere in the middle. And either way, even if you go back to almost like the addiction part of it, those extremes can become
Yes.
comforting and can
Oh, I loved it. Yeah.
yeah, and can kind of just make you go, oh, this is familiar. So yeah, I do want to attach to this. I do want to identify with this because that's all I know. But then you're lacking the authenticity of who you are as
Yeah.
an individual. So it's
And
crazy.
I want to give a little nuance here for anyone listening. It's not that when I was suffering, I I consciously was like, I like this. That's
No.
not what I'm getting at. When I was suffering, I truly was like, I'm suffering. And what I mean by I liked it is that it's clear now in hindsight that there was a deep attachment to those stories, that there was clear ways that I was choosing behaviors, vices, and patterns and people that were only exacerbating the problem. And so when you reflect on that, you go, well, that individual must be doing that for a reason. And
Mm.
it's humans, we do things because they feel good or that we want to. Some deep core of our sense wants to do it. And that's what I mean by like we choose our suffering and we become addicted to it and we like it. It's
No, yeah.
most of it is unconscious, but it is the drives that are still there.
Yes. Yeah, in your opinion, how can people become more conscious of that? What do you like?
Um,
What was it for you? You had several instances that helped you do that, but for anyone listening, if you were to give any insight on how to do that, what would you tell them?
this is something I actually work on with my clients. I'm a life coach, but I don't love the term. I like to think of myself more as just like a guide. But this is something I do with my clients, and I think anyone can do, which is firstly write the story of your life, like in detail, like see, write it down on paper, and like really, this should take a little while. It's not easy to write your whole life story, but try in as much detail as you can to write the story of your life that you think you see. Great. And then I want you to grab the big points and then see if you can write a different story using the same objective facts. And just the doing this process should hopefully start revealing that there are certain themes, narratives, or patterns in your life. And just simply having that awareness is going to help a little bit because it's going to help your brain, which is a predictive programming machine that's designed to pick up patterns and predict them. It'll help that machine become a little bit more aware of them so that perhaps before you make another decision that's simply continuing a pattern, your brain might recognize that it's actually just a pattern that you're continuing. Another thing you can do, which is by far, I think, the most powerful, is meditate. Except I really believe that meditation is hard. It's not easy. It takes like it's like disciplined daily practice. You know, and it but I cannot stress the importance enough. In my own personal life, it is the foundation from which all of my clarity, peace, wisdom, anything really comes from. I'm meditate for like 40 minutes a day now. It's not too hard. I could barely do 5 minutes for like the first year. Um, the point of that is just simply to say that it is a practice like exercise, and it takes time. But what I hope you'll get from meditation is that when you're able to create space within your mind to observe your emotions and your thoughts, suddenly what I hope might happen is that your sense of self expands a little bit, because suddenly you're not just your emotions and thoughts, you're the observer as well to these things. And in gaining, let's say, more consciousness, a broader consciousness, higher awareness, that's going to give you more power to be aware of the unconscious influences and patterns of your own life as they happen, so that you're not unconsciously driven by those forces. And then thirdly, I think the most important thing you can do is honestly cultivate a physical health. There's a reason why we talk about the gut mind connection now in psychology, and why we stress it so much. Um, it's just they're intrinsically linked. In fact, like your gut microbiome is probably what has the largest influence on depression more than anything else in your life. So, you know, you might want to start there if you are dealing with depression, is the food you intake. And this is actually something that's kind of very much stressed in this practice that I study, which is Kriya Yoga, which is essentially the idea that like you can't really pretend that you're going to have like a healthy psyche or a healthy spirit or a healthy body unless you really tackle these things all together. Oh, mind, body, soul. It's cliche because it's true. Because the mind is supported by the body. The body is supported by a mind that's, has a good will. And your spirit cannot really have the kind of level of awareness if it's consistently, let's say, stressed, or consistently the awareness is being drawn to, your aching back, or your whatever the heck it is, your physical ailments, because you have yet to tackle them. So, my advice is very practical. It's like, become conscious of the patterns in your life by doing some inventory work, digging into like your life, and see if you can identify the story or the narratives that hold power. Secondly, do some meditation. It's going to give you the actual tool to develop a stronger awareness. And thirdly, you gotta get healthy. You gotta get healthy. There's no way around it. I have I have yet to meet a truly well-rounded wise person who doesn't at least have some kind of health regimen. And it doesn't have to be insane. Like, being healthy doesn't mean being the most athletic, fit person. That is not what I'm saying. But you do have to be mindful of what you put in your mouth, and if you move your body, and to move your body rather.
Yeah. So my last question, which I'm sure you have heard me ask people, is if anyone resonated with your story, what would be the advice that you give them? What would you say to them?
Whether you believe it or not, you are connected to some divine wisdom, to a divine intelligence. And you can call this thing spirit if you're an esoteric fucker like me. Or you can very basically and plainly, through scientific terms, understand that it's nature. You are of nature. You are a byproduct of nature. You are an organic being that arose from nature's forces and intelligence. And as such, you are interconnected with this thing. The more that you can recognize that, contemplate that, and sit with that, I think the more guided you'll feel. And I just want you to know that in that connection to that grander wisdom, to that divinity, you also have power. You've also been endowed with a unique power as a human being. Both, let's say, spiritually, you have free will. More psychologically or scientifically, you have what most mammals don't have, which is the capacity to reason and not just be driven by your impulses. Like most animals are driven by impulse, and that's totally normal. We wouldn't say that it's evil for a lion to kill a baby zebra. It's just nature. Why is it evil for you to kill a baby human? Because it's not just nature anymore. You do now also have willpower. You have free will. In that recognition, I hope you also recognize that That means you have the power to change your life. And it's not in anyone else's hands. You don't change the world by changing other people's minds and by being a social activist, which is, I'm not saying that's inherently bad, but you will truly change the world when you become kinder, when you love yourself so wholeheartedly that you're no longer like afraid to love others, to tell the people in your life that you love them, even if they might not say it back, because you have a cup that's overflowing. It's not empty. And I don't know, it's like I want anyone listening to love themselves and to really understand what love is. Love, when I love my children, or when I love my children, I know that I'm not going to let them binge eat sugar. It's not because I don't love them. It's because I love them so much. I want to make sure that they're healthy. I hope that you can approach loving yourself in the same way. I know that loving yourself is taking care of yourself, is challenging the idea that you can't do it and pushing yourself, testing those boundaries, while also recognizing you are human and you are also here just for one life, and to have fun, to play kindly with compassion. And yeah, I guess that's really it. I guess if you can be love and be in love, the more that you can do that with compassion, while recognizing that you do have power and you're connected to a grander wisdom, I think your life will improve. And I hope so. And if it doesn't, whatever, you can DM me and complain.
Okay, well, tell people where to find you. How do they find you?
You can find me at El Divine Nino, El Divine Divine, Nino Nino, El Divine Nino. I'm on TikTok, on Instagram, and I also have a podcast on YouTube called Where's the Nuance. You can find it by searching Where's the Nuance, or yeah.
Thank you for coming on. I really appreciate this conversation.
Thank you so much for having me, Sabby.
Yeah, of course. Hello, my beautiful friends. Welcome to Proper Madness. My name is Sabby, and I give a unique perspective on mental health by providing tools, guidance, and knowledge on how we can better understand ourselves, as well as our past and present experiences, and in doing so, we can help heal our mental health. I get to speak with a variety of individuals from around the world as they share their stories from their journey through their mental wellness so that it helps others stand strong and use their voice.